Since the founding of the monastery on Reichenau Island in Lake Constance in 724, the island has developed for centuries to become a European cultural and political centre. Church and monastery buildings, along with their treasures from this golden age, have been preserved. Today, the monastery tradition is still a major factor in the settlement and cultivation of Reichenau Island, on which wine and vegetables thrive. Nature has formed diverse areas around the lake. In the shallow water zone, many species of fish spawn and rare ducks thrive. Very little is known about Bishop Pirmin, the founding abbot of Reichenau Monastery. He probably came from the Irish Franconian monastic tradition. In 724, he founded the monastery, along with about 40 fellow monks. Saint Pirmin is said to have fled Spain ahead of the Moorish invaders, with patronage that included Charles Martel. More locally, he received the patronage of Count Berthold of the Ahalolfinger and the Alemannian Duke Santfrid I. Once, there were more than 20 churches and chapels on the island of Reichenau. Only 3 of them have survived the centuries. Towers are located over the apses enclosed at right angles. The church was completed in 1134, and the 2 eastern towers in the late 15th century. This Carolingian church building was richly painted with figured scenes and leads to the assumption that monumental painting on Reichenau Island had already experienced a heyday in the 9th century. With regard to the painting technique used, the wall paintings go back to a North Italian Lombard painting. Panels, sculptures, and a Carolingian choir screen panel decorate the church. Vast areas of the island are nature reserves. The marshland near the shores preserves landscapes as monastery founder Pirmin probably discovered them when he first set foot on the island more than 1,000 years ago. Today, these preserved areas are protecting species of plants and animals which are typical of the region around Lake Constance. Overall, the waters to the left and to the right of the island's dam are a paradise, and in winter, also an important resting place for waterfowls. The countryside around Lake Constance provides an outstanding testimonial to the religious and cultural role of the monasteries. In the Reichenau Museum, an oil on canvas represents Reichenau Island with the arrival of Pirmin in 724. The preserved collection of Reichenau works are amongst the most invaluable and impressive expressions of art during the Middle Ages. The UNESCO Heritage Committee decides whether a monument or memorial shall be included in the list. The criterion for cultural heritage is individuality and historical authenticity. They represent a masterpiece of manual creativity, demonstrating an extraordinary recognition of cultural tradition, and can be associated to significant artistic and literary works. St. George's, built around the end of the 9th century, served to keep George's relic and remains in the style of the early Middle Ages. With its unadorned exterior, the Basilica of St. George in Reichenau Obertzell preserves the original state of the 10th and 11th century virtually unchanged. The founder of the church at the eastern tip of the island was Abbot Hatto III. The former gardens of Reichenau Monastery and the little book on Wallafrid's gardening, written in the form of a poem, are considered the origin of the fact that the island is today also known far and wide as the Vegetable Island. In the church, views of the raised crossing and of the choir area through the nave are remarkable. These wall paintings bear witness to impressive artistic creativity. Simple sculptures adorn the church. Few of them are from the 14th century. With the 8 wall paintings in the nave, the largest connected cycle of monumental wall paintings has been preserved in the church. The wall paintings were probably commissioned under the Golden Abbot Witigowo. The parallels of the content and composition of the pictures of the miracles of Jesus in the Church of St. George can be found in Reichenau book illustration. Now, the Christ on the cross symbolizes this concept. The first changes were made to the cycle of paintings in the 14th century, when a Gothic rood screen was installed in the church. In 1620, the nave paintings were completely painted over. At the end of the 18th century, the church was almost completely whitewashed. The last restoration in the nave, on the choir and the crossing, was completed around 1990. With its marvellous monumental cycle of wall painting, St. George's is considered the most important monument of an entire era. Here, the calming of the windstorm on the Sea of Galilee, also the daughter of Jairus. The preservation of the wall paintings will continue to be a primary task for monument preservation in the future. The statue of the death of Christ is considered a prelude to eternal life. The churches of St. Mary and Marcus, mainly built between the 9th and 11th centuries, provide a panorama of early medieval monastic architecture in Central Europe. The monastery became an important stimulator for European civilization and grew to be the religious and spiritual cultural centre of Europe. The monastery's abbots acted as government officials at the court, as the educators of princes, diplomats and envoys of the emperor. Pirmin's simple wooden church building had already become a new abbey church in the early 9th century. In the centuries that followed, the existing cross-basilica was often changed, rebuilt and enlarged. The early church, from 816, always partially remained part of the house of God. The traces of the monastery's history can be clearly read from the constructive changes made to the church building over the centuries. Abbot Bishop Hatto had a new abbey church built during his time in office. This is also called the Hatto Basilica, and was devoted to the Mother of God in 816. According to their architectural design, the monasteries of that time were impressive complexes. The oldest parts of the Cathedral of St. Mary and Marcus go back to the Carolingian church, which was consecrated in 816. The nave dates back to the 12th century, and the roof truss, which is still visible today, to the years 1236 to 37. The church was completed with the Gothic choir in the 15th century, and in 1742, the Baroque choir grid was installed. The chiselled gridiron, like lace, has created a closed space around the altar. The details and finesse of the grid contrast with the sobriety of the church. Under Abbot Bern, the abbey church, which had been damaged by fire in 1006, was restored, and the Church of St. Mark was redesigned with a western transept and a central tower. It was probably modelled on the old Church of St. Peter in Rome. In the centre stands the altar of St. Mark, built around 1470 for the Gothic shrine of St. Mark. Today, the most important relics continue to be the bones of St. Mark. Tombstones of the average age adorn the wall of the church. Here we see an oil painting about the return of the Holy Blood relic in 1738. The vault painting, with the depictions of the evangelists and the plant motifs, originates from the 16th century. The three-wing high altar was produced by the Constance painter Rudolf Stahel in 1498 as the All Saints' altar. Suspended above the late Gothic choir stalls is a modern organ from 1967. The frescoes can be traced back to the models of late classical antiquity from northern Italy, as well as to Carolingian and Byzantine developments. In the 10th century, wall painting achieved an unmatched splendour. Since 2001, it has enjoyed the protection of UNESCO as part of the World Cultural Heritage Programme.